They say trust isn't something that disappears overnight, that it erodes slowly, little pieces at a time. But I don't know if I believe that anymore. Because the first crack in mine came on a completely ordinary Tuesday, sometime between lunch breaks and printer jams. I'd left work early that day, nothing dramatic, just a short shift that gave me enough time to pick up something nice and swing by Lena's office. I figured I'd surprise her. I used to do that kind of thing when we first started dating, leave her a coffee on her windshield, show up with takeout after a long day. She always used to say those were the moments that made her feel safe, seen. Like I paid attention. I hadn't done it in a while. Life gets fast without asking, you know? But that morning I'd pass by a flower stand downtown, one of those little sidewalk setups with bundled wildflowers and handwritten price tags, and it just hit me. I thought, why not? I picked up a bouquet of sunflowers and white daisies, her favorites. I even remembered to ask for no baby's breath because she always said it smelled like funeral homes. I got to her building just before noon. Her office had a small cafe on the ground floor, glass walls, warm lighting, one of those new-age corporate wellness spaces where employees could sit and pretend they weren't working through their lunch. I figured I'd wait outside, text her after I saw she was free. I didn't expect to see her already there. Through the glass, I spotted her almost immediately. Tan blazer, hair tied up the way she did when she didn't want it falling in her eyes. Her posture was relaxed, almost soft. She was sitting across from someone, a guy, maybe mid-20s, clean-cut in a way that looked intentional. He was leaning forward slightly, elbows close, like he was sharing something private. And Lena had that look on her face. Not just polite interest. Not workplace attentiveness. She was smiling like she knew him. I froze. There's this kind of moment your brain has to catch up with your eyes. And mine was lagging behind like it didn't want to get there. I stepped a little closer to the window, half out of sight behind a column. The guy said something and she reached out, laying her hand on his. Just for a second. Maybe two. But it wasn't casual. Her fingers lingered. Like she'd done it before. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my chest started to hurt. I raised my phone, hesitated, then hit record. Just a short video, maybe 20 seconds. Long enough to catch the moment. Long enough to get burned into my head for the rest of my life. She didn't see me. Or if she did, she didn't react. The weirdest part was how calm I felt as I walked back to my car. The bouquet was still in my hand, but by then it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a prop. I dropped it on the passenger seat, keys trembling just enough to make the ignition fumble. I sat there for a few minutes, letting the silence wrap around me like a wet coat. That night, I didn't say anything. She came home late, something about a meeting that ran long. I nodded like I believed her, like I hadn't stood 15 feet from her while she laughed like that with someone who wasn't me. It was a few days later when she brought him up. She called him Eli. Said he was a trainee, new to the company, a little awkward, sweet in a kind of broken way. His brother had died suddenly, or maybe it was a cousin, I don't know. I only half listened. It felt like someone playing a violin behind glass, pretty but too far away to touch. He's been going through it, she said casually as she dried dishes. I've just been trying to help. I nodded. Said something like, that's kind of you. And maybe it was. Maybe it was just kindness. Maybe that's all it ever was. But I've been with Lena for 6 years. I know the way she smiles when she's nervous. I know the way her fingers twitch when she's hiding something. I know when her voice is trying too hard to be light. That moment outside the cafe, it broke something open. I didn't tell her about the video. I didn't confront her or ask questions. Instead, I started paying attention in a way I hadn't in years. Little things. The way her phone was suddenly never left unattended on the counter. The way her laughter turned inward like she was carrying something private inside her. And I don't think she noticed that I was watching now. She'd always been the type to explain things just enough. A canceled dinner was because her boss needed her late. The new earrings were from a coworker's gift swap. The perfume I didn't recognize? A sample from that kiosk lady at the mall. The perfume was the thing that got under my skin the most. It wasn't a loud scent, just a faint, floral musk. Nothing like the vanilla tones she used to wear. It showed up on her scarf one night, then lingered on her coat the next. I asked once, offhandedly, new perfume. She didn't even flinch. Oh yeah, I guess. Sample. Do you like it? I said it smelled nice. And maybe it did. But not on her. Not when it smelled like someone else's story. I should have asked more. I should have said what I saw. But something inside me needed to wait. Maybe for her to bring it up. Maybe for something worse. Or maybe because I knew the minute I said it out loud, our life would start to come apart. You know, people think betrayal is loud. Screaming matches. slammed doors, secret hotel keys. But the scariest kind is quiet. It walks into your home with familiar footsteps. It kisses you goodnight and says, "Drive safe tomorrow." It remembers your mother's birthday. And still, it happens. I kept the video. I watched it once more a few nights later. Just once. Just to make sure I hadn't imagined the way she touched him. The way her eyes softened when he spoke. Then I backed it up to a folder on my external drive. And I named it something harmless. Just in case. Trust doesn't just die, it withers. The first fracture hits, and then it's like the whole thing starts to rot from the inside. You try to tell yourself everything's fine. You try to believe that what you saw, the hand touch, the laughter, the private smiles, is something innocent. That you're reading into things. But once the suspicion sets in, nothing looks the same again. 3 days after the cafe, Lena told me she'd be flying to Chicago for a 3-day conference. Something with her marketing team, all last minute. She said it like it was just another work trip. I said I understood. That I'd miss her. She smiled and kissed me goodbye. She smelled like that perfume again. She was wearing new heels when she left. I remember that. Navy blue, with a subtle gold accent. I hadn't seen those before. After she drove off, I stood in the garage a while. I wasn't looking for anything, at least I didn't think I was. But when I went to grab a spare jacket from her trunk, hers always had gum in the pockets. I noticed the shoebox. It was one of those high-end ones, glossy and thick, like something from a boutique store. And inside wasn't just the pair of new heels. There was lingerie, black lace, delicate, expensive looking. Still had tags on it. Folded underneath was a bottle of perfume. A different one than the sample scent she'd told me about. This one had a name I didn't recognize. Something French, something hard to pronounce. I closed the box gently, took a breath, backed away like I was standing too close to a live wire. You know that feeling when your mind wants to race but your body just goes still? That's what I felt in that moment. Like I'd stepped outside of time. Nothing about what I saw screamed work trip. She'd left me the hotel information on the kitchen counter. Handwritten, not printed. The name of the hotel in downtown Chicago, the one she said the conference was booked at. I called, pretending to be a late arrival on her reservation. "She's not checked in," the front desk clerk told me. "We don't have a reservation under that name." I thanked him, hung up, and sat on the floor. I stared at the fridge for a long time. I don't know why. Maybe because her reminder notes were still pinned to it. Sticky notes with quick scribbles. Groceries. Dentist appointment. Don't forget Aunt Ruth's birthday. I called 2 more hotels nearby. Nothing. By that point, I didn't know what I was looking for anymore. Proof she was lying? Or just the comfort of being wrong? Later that night, she texted me. A photo of a skyline at dusk. Lake Michigan stretching out beneath a pink sky, the outline of a tall building, and in the foreground, a hotel coffee cup sitting on the windowsill. She captioned it, "Long day, but the view makes up for it." I zoomed in. The coffee cup had the hotel logo, but I recognized the building outside the window. It was the Newmark Tower. And that hotel? I remembered reading an article about it once. It was one of those ultra-modern places, all minimalist decor and light therapy bathrooms. I looked it up again. The building had 12 floors. Her caption had said she was on the 15th. I stared at that number for a long time. 15th floor. I didn't respond right away. I just saved the photo, flagged the message, and set my phone down. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted to be wrong so badly. But if there's one thing I've learned in all this, it's that your gut never lies. It whispers. It nags. And if you ignore it long enough, it finds new ways to scream. That night, I laid in our bed with her pillow next to mine, untouched. Still smelled like her shampoo. A kind of fake coconut scent she'd picked up from some influencer's must-haves list. I stared at the ceiling until morning. I didn't sleep. The next day, I went through our texts from the last couple of months. All of them. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But the further back I scrolled, the more I started to notice things I had overlooked. Lena had started answering me in shorter bursts. "Kay, yep, on it. The warmth had bled out slowly like someone turning down a dimmer without you noticing. She used to send me random pictures, what she was eating, something funny from work, her cat curled up on the window ledge. Now it was just logistics. Be home late. Don't wait up. Dinner in the fridge. I opened up her social media next. She hadn't posted anything about the trip. Nothing about the conference. Not a single sh*t from the airport, no airport lounge selfies, no hashtags, no checked-in locations. It was like she didn't want to be seen. But someone did tag her. A coworker. A casual group photo taken 3 nights ago. Lena wasn't in it. The caption read, "Team dinner in town while the boss is away." While the boss is away. She wasn't with them. She hadn't told me that part. I clicked on the coworker's profile and scrolled further. There was a photo from an earlier event, an after-hours happy hour thing. And in the background, barely noticeable, was the same guy from the cafe. Eli. He was leaning on the bar, head tilted towards someone out of frame. I couldn't see the other person's face, but the shape of the hair, the gold earring, it looked like Lena. I zoomed in, then out again. Coincidences pile up like driftwood. Alone, they don't mean much. But once you see them in a line, you start realizing someone's building a raft. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Saying it out loud meant something was real, and I still hadn't let myself believe that. But the picture of the 12th floor hotel was still in my phone. And that box in her trunk wasn't going anywhere. And suddenly, the pieces didn't just fit, they formed something sharp. That night, she called me. Her voice was smooth, casual. She told me the sessions had gone late and that she was exhausted. I told her I hoped she'd get some rest. She laughed and said, "You sound weird. Everything okay?" I said, "Yeah. Just tired." But in that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I wasn't heartbroken either. I was quiet. Like the silence before a storm. She told me she loved me before hanging up. And I said it back, because that's what you do. That's what you say. But as I stood in the kitchen after the call, staring down at the list of hotels on my laptop, I realized I was done pretending not to see. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't coincidence. This was the start of a truth I hadn't asked for, but one I couldn't avoid any longer. It's amazing how quickly you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt once you've seen just enough to realize they don't deserve it. After the hotel lie, I knew I couldn't keep guessing. I needed more than suspicion. I needed truth, unfiltered, unpolished, and preferably digital. Because if you ask someone for the truth, they'll give you the version they think you can survive. But if you dig for it, it shows up raw. Untouched. I remembered Lena's old laptop. We used to share it before I bought her that new one last Christmas. The old one had a sticky spacebar and one of those pastel pink keyboard covers she insisted made typing more aesthetic. She kept it in the second drawer of her office desk at home. I hadn't touched it in months. Neither had she. At least, not that I knew of. The password was the same. Her childhood dog's name with 2 exclamation points. Bruno. Like I'd ever forget it. Lena was the kind of person who always used her memories as keys. The screen lit up and there it was, her old desktop background, still the 2 of us at some cabin in Oregon. I looked happy in the photo. She looked distant. Funny how you don't notice that stuff until you're watching the end play out in real time. I clicked through slowly. At first, it was all normal, documents, tax files, old resumes, the digital equivalent of attic dust. But then I opened her browser. She hadn't logged out of anything. That was my first mistake. Or maybe it was my first real decision. She had a folder in her bookmarks bar labeled recipes and notes. It looked innocent enough. Inside were links to food blogs, but mixed between the vegan curry and banana bread was one link that stood out, a password manager. Clicked it. Autofilled. She hadn't changed a thing. Her email opened in another tab like it was waiting for me. That's where it started unraveling. There was a message thread labeled Oak. I don't know why that name hit me the way it did. Maybe because it sounded fake. Too specific. Too symbolic. Like a metaphor you didn't want to unpack. The emails weren't romantic. Not at first. They read more like journal entries. Things she was telling him that she never told me. Felt like screaming in the middle of that dinner, one said. He talks, but he never sees me. He. That was me. She wrote about our routines, our fights, our good moments twisted into clinical breakdowns. When he brings me flowers, it feels like I'm being managed, not loved. Another one, he notices when I'm gone, but never when I'm disappearing slowly. I don't know how long I sat there scrolling. My mouth had gone dry. My fingers were ice. Then I opened the attachments. Photos. One after another. In one, she's lying on our couch, feet curled up, wine glass in hand. I recognized that night. I'd gone to visit my mom, she'd had knee surgery, and I'd stayed late to help her with dinner. Lena told me she was staying in that evening. Said she had a migraine and just wanted to rest. But in the photo, she was smiling. Half drunk. And she wasn't alone. He was there. Oak. Sitting next to her, arms slung behind her shoulders like it was his place. In another photo, he was holding up the wine bottle we'd bought on our anniversary trip to Mendocino. The one we'd saved for a special night. She said she'd opened it alone. Needed something warm, she told me. Missed you. She hadn't missed me. She had company. In that same photo, I spotted something else on the coffee table, our old wedding album. Closed. Underneath a takeout box. Like it had been pushed aside. That was the moment something in me went silent. Not shattered. Not angry. Just numb. I clicked into another folder. Notes. She'd written pages, literal pages, about our life, our conversations, our patterns. Like she was studying me. Like we were a research subject. He deflects when uncomfortable. Touch-averse during conflict. Avoids eye contact when ashamed. Relies on acts of service as apology. Each line stripped away more of my memory of us. At first, I thought maybe they were therapy notes. Maybe something she was doing to better understand our relationship. But then I found his replies. I noticed that too. He uses silence like a shield. It makes you shrink. They weren't just observations. They were building a case. For what, I didn't know yet. But it wasn't love. It wasn't even resentment. It felt methodical. I found a chat log, an actual chat app one didn't recognize, something encrypted. Took a few guesses to get in. Lena had saved the password in the browser like she assumed no one would ever look. In it, they talked like old friends. Like co-conspirators. Sometimes he was angry. She'd soothe him. Sometimes she was afraid. He'd say, we're almost done. Just hold on. Done with what? One message from her read. When this ends, I don't want to feel guilty. That's the only thing I care about. No mess. No trail. Just distance. He responded. You're not the guilty one. You're the awake one. I think I read that line a dozen times. The awake one. As if the rest of us were just walking dreams. I copied everything. Emails, photos, logs. Put them on a flash drive and labeled it Tax Stuff 2021. Just in case. Then I logged out, shut the lid, and left the room. My hands were shaking, but I didn't feel anything. I thought maybe I'd scream. Maybe cry. But all I felt was the quiet ticking of our wall clock in the hall. When Lena came home later that night, she kissed me on the cheek and asked if I'd eaten. I said I wasn't hungry. She made herself a sandwich, talked about how boring the conference sessions were, how the breakout group on brand psychology was a waste of time. She leaned against the counter and smiled while chewing. Like nothing was wrong. Like we were the same people we'd always been. But I wasn't. And now I knew she wasn't either. She didn't just cheat. She had rewritten our life while I was still living in it. She had split herself into two people, one for me, one for Oak, and kept them both alive long enough to convince each of us we were the real version of her world. But I had proof now. And I had questions. What was the endgame? And how much more had I missed? The envelope was small. Off-white. No return address. No stamp. Just my name on the front in neat, tight handwriting I recognized instantly, Lena's. I found it in our mailbox on a Thursday evening, buried between a pizza coupon and a dental reminder. She was in the shower upstairs when I opened it. Inside was a single key. No note. No explanation. Just a copy of a silver house key taped to a sticky note that said only one word. Seattle. The key was old. I knew it immediately. It belonged to the apartment we used to rent years ago, before we moved here, before the wedding. We hadn't been back since. I assumed the place had long been leased out, repainted, lived in by strangers. But that key in my hand didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a dare. I waited until she was asleep that night to look up the property listing. Nothing. No tenants. The management company still owned the building. But when I called the next morning, posing as someone interested in a lease, they told me the unit hadn't been rented in over a year. Place is still furnished, the woman on the phone said, sounding distracted. Someone keeps extending the lease, but no one's lived in it. Least not officially. That was enough for me. I left that evening without telling Lena. Said I had to drive out to help my cousin with his car, some last-minute thing. She didn't ask questions. She barely looked up from her phone. I packed light, just my bag, the key, and the flash drive labeled Tax Stuff 2021 that never left my pocket now. The drive to Seattle was cold and wet. Rain lashed across the windshield and the roads shimmered under the streetlights like glass. The entire way there, my mind played every version of what I might find: an empty room, a stranger, a message taped to the wall, or worse, nothing. I didn't know what scared me more. When I reached the building, it was just after midnight. The lobby smelled the same: lemon cleaner and stale carpet. I climbed the stairs slowly, every creak underfoot sounding louder than it should have. The key slid into the lock without resistance, like it had been used recently. I opened the door, and it was like stepping into a memory that had learned how to rot. The furniture was the same, but older somehow. Worn. A layer of dust over most of it except for a few clear spots. Someone had been here. Not long ago. A scarf hung on the back of the chair near the window. Gray, knit, Lena's. I recognized it instantly. She used to wear it on walks around Green Lake. I hadn't seen it in over a year. I thought she'd lost it. She told me she had. The scarf was warm to the touch. In the bathroom, a toothbrush sat in the holder. New. Bristles still stiff. Next to it was a half-empty bottle of perfume, same scent from the box in her trunk. The sink was wet. This place wasn't abandoned. It was curated. Deliberate. Like a second version of her life was being maintained in parallel. I walked into the bedroom slowly, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. The bed was made too perfectly. On the nightstand sat a copy of the bell jar, a cracked mug with lipstick on the rim, and a small photo frame. The photo stopped me cold. It was Lena. An oak. She was smiling. He was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that made sense. But someone, probably her, had taken a pen and scratched his face out. Not a single line. Over and over and over again until it was just ink and paper torn down to the bone. I turned the photo face down. Then I noticed something under the pillow. It was a flash drive. New. Still warm from where it had been hidden. No label. Just black plastic. My hands were shaking as I slipped it into my pocket. I didn't stay long after that. The apartment suddenly felt small, like the walls were listening. Watching. I locked the door behind me, descended the steps 2 at a time, and didn't stop driving until I hit the outskirts of the city again. I opened the video back home. Not right away. I waited until 3 a.m. when the house was dark, the only light coming from my laptop screen. I slid in headphones. Pressed play. It opened with static. Then the camera settled. Lena and Oak. In that apartment. The same room I just stood in. Oak was pacing, agitated. His voice low but sharp. You said this was temporary, he hissed. You said it was almost over. Lena was sitting on the bed, laughing quietly. You're being dramatic. I gave up everything, he snapped. You said he didn't matter. Her expression changed slightly. A flicker of something: amusement? Pity? You were never the plan, she said. Calm. Clear. The room went silent. Oak stopped moving. He stared at her like she'd slapped him. And she just looked up at him with that same expression I'd seen across dinner tables, across holidays, across the shared rituals of marriage. Indifferent. Controlled. I needed someone to prove the theory, she said. And you were willing. He didn't speak again. At least not on camera. He turned toward the door, paused, then left the frame. She stared after him for a few seconds. Then turned toward the camera. And smiled. Then the screen went dark. No fade out. No music. No ending. Just black. I sat there a long time after it ended, staring at nothing. She hadn't known the camera was recording. It had been hidden, likely by him. Maybe meant as leverage. Or insurance. But that smile at the end, it wasn't meant for me. Or him. It was for her. For the version of Lena that existed beyond either of us. It was the smile of someone who had already moved on to the next act. The next city. The next version of herself. And suddenly I understood something awful. This wasn't just betrayal. It was design. Lena never talked much about her family. I'd met her mother once, briefly, an awkward brunch with overcooked eggs and too many forced smiles. Her dad wasn't in the picture, she'd told me early on. He left when I was young. Nothing worth explaining. She had a half-sister, Amber, but they'd been estranged for years. When I'd asked why, she'd always give the same clipped answer: too much history. So when Amber showed up at my door 2 days after I found the flash drive, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. She looked enough like Lena that I didn't ask who she was right away. Same sharp chin. Same storm-colored eyes. But where Lena was always polished, composed, Amber looked like she'd been caught in a windstorm and never stopped running. Disheveled hair. Denim jacket that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. She didn't knock. She just stood there when I opened the door, clutching her phone like it might dissolve in her hands. I'm Amber, she said, breathless. I'm Lena's sister. I didn't answer right away. Just opened the door wider and gestured inside. She didn't sit. Didn't look around. Just stood near the kitchen counter, fingers trembling. She called me, she said. 2 nights ago. I hadn't heard from her in almost a year. What did she say? She was crying. Rambling. Said she'd done something she couldn't undo. That people were watching her. Following her. She sounded terrified. I stared at her. Did she say where she was? Amber shook her head. Just kept saying she didn't know who she was anymore. Said she left something somewhere for me, but she hung up before I could ask what. I've been trying to trace her calls. This was the last known address I had for her. I didn't know she was married. I nodded slowly. You're a little late to the party. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You have no idea what she's capable of, she said, voice cracking. You think she's mysterious, right? A little distant, maybe cold when she's scared? I used to think that was just her personality. Turns out it's something a lot darker. She lied to me, I said. About more things than I can count. Amber looked me in the eye for the first time. She lied to everyone. Before I could ask what she meant, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Just stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Amber looked at me. You should've. I frowned. Why? Because there are people looking for her. And if they can't find her, they'll look for the people she left behind. Before I could press her further, there was a knock at the door. This one was sharp. Measured. Not someone lost or afraid. I opened it to find a man, late 40s maybe, long coat, trimmed beard, eyes like river stones. Cold, unreadable. I'm here about Lena, he said. I didn't answer. I didn't invite him in. I just stepped aside. He walked past me, looked around like he'd been here before, and nodded once when he spotted Amber. You got here fast, he said to her. I wasn't going to ignore her, Amber replied. He turned to me. She ever tell you about the fire? What fire? His eyes flicked toward Amber, then back to me. The house she grew up in burned down when she was 15. Her adoptive parents died inside. I felt the blood drain from my face. She never mentioned that. He gave a small, bitter laugh. Of course not. Who are you? I knew her before she was Lena, he said. Back when she was different. Amber crossed her arms. He worked with her. If you can call it that. She was part of a study, the man said. Unofficial. Long defunded. Behavioral models, emotional adaptation. She was brilliant, gifted at mimicry. But she didn't want to be observed. She wanted control. What kind of study? I asked, but I already knew I didn't want the answer. She wasn't a patient, he said. She was the architect. She turned the mirror back on us. Amber was pacing now, agitated. This isn't helping. She's not just missing, he said. She's gone dark. Deliberately. Which means she's planning something or running from something, maybe both. Either way, people are going to come knocking. He handed me a photo, grainy, printed from a cheap inkjet. Lena at a payphone. Put up. I scanning the street like she expected something bad. This was taken 2 days ago, he said. In Oregon. Small coastal town. She's never been the kind to retrace steps, which means either she's looking for something she left behind or she wants someone to follow her. I looked at Amber. She wouldn't meet my eyes. What aren't you telling me? Amber pulled a folded note from her jacket. She mailed this to me. A week before the call. Postmarked from Seattle. I opened it. Tell him the key matters. The apartment matters. The camera was never his. And if he finds the journal, burn it. There was no signature. Just a drawing in the corner, an oak tree. I sat down. Everything felt sideways. She's unraveling, Amber said quietly. But the worst part is, I don't think it's new. I think it's just the part she finally stopped hiding. The man stood. Whatever's coming, you need to be ready. You think this was about love? About cheating? It's not. That was just the bait? What is it then? I asked. He paused at the door. You were an experiment. He was a variable. She was the control. Then he left. Amber stayed the night. I didn't sleep. Neither did she. We didn't speak much either. Just stared out the window, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of settling wood. In the morning, she was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just a slip of paper left on the kitchen table. It said, don't look for her. If she wants to be found, she'll find you. I found him in a motel so run down it looked abandoned from the street. One of those places with flickering neon letters and a front desk behind bulletproof glass. Room 19. He'd written the number in sharp block letters on the back of a receipt and left it under my windshield wiper 2 nights ago. I didn't know if it was a trap or a cry for help. But I went. When he opened the door, he looked nothing like the man in those photographs. Oak, if that was even his real name, was gone. I sunk into his skull like he hadn't slept in weeks. His hands trembled as he stepped aside to let me in, motioning to the only chair while he sat on the bed. I figured you'd come, he said. Eventually, I didn't respond. I just stared at him until he started talking. I didn't know at first, he said. I thought she needed someone. That she was in pain. I didn't know I was being watched. Measured. He opened a battered suitcase and pulled out a thick stack of letters, each one folded, aged, and covered in Lena's handwriting. He handed them to me like they were evidence. She wrote about you. Constantly. Everything you said, how you moved, how you reacted. It was like she was building a profile. I flipped through the letters, stunned. Pages and pages of my life, retold like a research project. She told me I was part of something bigger, he continued. That she was working on a study. Behavior under emotional duress. Long-term trust erosion. She said you both knew. I looked up. She told you I knew? She said you were aware. That you'd agreed to it once. That you'd signed off on it in the early days of your relationship. That it was your idea. I almost laughed. That's a lie. I know that now, he said, eyes flickering. I didn't then. He handed me a small notebook. Her journal. I opened it slowly, flipping through pages of tight, calculated handwriting. March 12th, he still hasn't noticed the code in the mirror. March 30th, Oak is starting to crack. But I need him to. April 7th, they both think they're choosing. I already have. I stared at that last line. They both think they're choosing. Not anymore. A month later, I got the call. Unknown number. No voicemail. Just a simple, blunt message when I answered, Lena is gone. There was no funeral. No obituary. Just an accident, they said. A car found wrecked on a cliffside road near the Washington coast. No body recovered. Just pieces. Her ID. Her scarf. A partial dental match. I didn't know whether to believe it. Oak vanished. Amber disappeared again, just like before. And me? I stayed in the house for one more week. Then I packed everything I hadn't already burned. I deleted the drive. I erased the photos. I kept the journal. Not as proof. Just as a reminder. Then I moved north. A town where no one knew my name, where the sky was always gray and the sound of rain made it easier to sleep. I bought a small cabin with a leaky roof and uneven floors. But it was mine. Sometimes people ask why I don't talk about my past. Why I live so quietly. I tell them I used to believe in love like it was a contract. Now I believe in silence. It doesn't ask for anything. It doesn't lie. It just is. And for the first time in years, that's enough.